Hi guys, so my name's Amy and I am a PE content writer at Twinkl. I've been at Twinkl for about 8 or so years, and I've got many years of primary school teaching prior to that as a PE lead, and I'm just currently at the moment just doing a little bit of teaching, primary school PE teaching in our partnership school, getting to teach some brilliant PE mastery lessons.
Hi, I'm Paul Draper, content writer, editor in the PE team at Twinkl. Currently working on the PE Mastery Scheme, which you'll hear a lot more about as we go through the session. My background is in primary education, previously as well community recreation. I've led PE in primary schools as well as working as an outdoor learning practitioner as well. So just to take you through the content of today's session, we're going to take you through the physical activity guidelines. Some of those will be just a reminder for us all, and some updates as well. We're going to take you through our PE Mastery Scheme and what that is and what that looks like, and what's available for you to help you to hopefully transform or add to your PE curriculum. The 3 pillars of progression which underpin our Mastery Scheme, and the progression that runs through that as well. What a PE mastery lesson looks like and how that helps you again to improve hopefully PE outcomes for children and their enjoyment and love of physical activity, and then something called the STAR values, our personal best challenges, inclusion across PE, and then there'll be a chance at the end for questions and obviously some answers. Okay, so first of all, I say these are probably for some of us a little bit of a reminder, but it's always good to have the updated information as well, because a lot of these things change over the years. So in terms of children and young people from age 5 to 18, the aim is for all children and young people to partake in an average of 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per day. Now that obviously doesn't have to include a PE lesson every day, but PE is included as part of that. That could be the commute to school and back. That's why there's lots of initiatives now around walking to school, cycling, scooting to school, bike buses, and all these kinds of initiatives that are positive initiatives that are going on across the country. It can include activities out of school, extracurricular activities, playtimes, and just any physical activity is part of that 60 minutes. Also looking at a variety of activities as well, chances to avoid sitting and lying down for long periods of time. That's why we're seeing a lot more active breaks in classrooms, hopefully, where we're seeing more cross-curricular offerings for different lessons, where introducing activity into other lessons such as maths and English. Any chances to move and be active adds to that ability to meet that 60-minute target. Variety of intensities as well is really important for developing children's fundamental movement skills, to help in their physical development of muscles and bones as well. This is a quote from Sport England, that positive experiences at an early age help build the foundations for an active life. If children and young people have experiences that feel fun, positive, and give them a sense of confidence, they're more likely to want to be active in the future. And this fits with our focus, not only at Twinkl and the PE Mastery Scheme, but what we should be trying to achieve across our teaching of PE. We're trying to encourage physical activity for all, and that lifelong love of activity, so that children can start to see the physical benefits of it, the benefits for their well-being, for their socialization skills and their mental health, and all the benefits that activity can bring to living a healthy lifestyle as they grow up into being adults. So we've just got a little bit of a poll here. So thinking about that 60-minute target per day of moderate to vigorous activity, how many children as a percentage do we think are meeting the target? So we've got a poll that if you just click in the bottom right hand corner, you should hopefully see 9 dots there. I think that's what it shows on mine, and then you should be able to click polls, and there's the option between 67%, 48%, 29%, or 12%. So just if you're able to have a click of one of those options. So how many children are meeting the target? And this is from a recent survey. The latest data we've got from a 2023 to 2024 survey. So it's the most up-to-date information that we've got. Okay, right. So I've had a couple of entries there. That's absolutely fine. I'm glad we're not down at 12% here, which would be a real concern. But just to reveal where we're at. So in terms of those that are partaking in 30 minutes or less than 30 minutes per day of activity, we're around about 30%. Those that are in the middle band between 30 and 59 minutes per day, about 23%. And those that are meeting that target, around about 48%, who are on average doing 60 plus minutes a day of physical activity. But I think this figure is really important, this 60 minutes, because it makes us think about how we set up our school day in terms of active breaks, in terms of PE, and really thinking about those opportunities for encouraging children and also families. Let's not forget that, if it can be done as a family, that we can really encourage that physical literacy for everybody, that relationship with physical activity in the community as well. And it's really important figure to work towards. Just to leave you with this quote before I pass on to Amy, what's enjoyable and positive varies for different children and young people. So our aim must be for all to get an experience which meets their rapidly changing needs. This leads into us later on talking about the ability to adapt and modify our PE curriculum, our PE activities, any physical activity that goes on in our schools and wider community as well. Our ability to differentiate our PE activities and our PE offerings to make sure that all children can flourish, can enjoy, can develop in their own way, and to offer a varied experiences as well for children to really develop a range of skills, a range of and that's just not just physical skills, social skills, teamwork, communication, all those many benefits that come with high quality PE teaching and physical activity. So I'll pass on to Amy now for the next part.
Thank you, Paul. So that is where hopefully PE Mastery comes in. That's the challenge we have to try and meet the needs of all of the children and offer and provide a broad and balanced, engaging curriculum, which we feel we've absolutely sort of done with our PE Mastery scheme. So what is it? It's our brand new curriculum scheme for PE. It's a skills-based PE curriculum scheme. So it focuses on the development of skills rather than sports, although these do feature throughout the scheme as well. It has a mastery approach to PE. And I'm just going to compare it to maths a little bit here now. So for many years, a mastery approach has been implemented in maths, and educators have seen great improvements and outcomes. And PE is no different. We apply the same principles as mastery maths in the context of PE in our PE Mastery scheme. For example, each year in the autumn term, every year we'll do a fundamental movement skills unit, which will essentially be like your place value in maths. And obviously the fundamental movement skills are the skills that will underpin all of the future learning for that year in the scheme. And obviously it's essential that children have a good grasp of these fundamental movement skills, these concepts, before they move on to any future learning. Likewise with the PE with the maths mastery, some concepts are trickier to grasp in PE. and they'll need longer to teach. You need more time spent teaching them. So we have different length units. They don't neatly fit into the 6-week term. So some of our units will go on a term and beyond. Some will not take a whole term, sort of be maybe 3-4 weeks long. Depending on how much you need to deepen and master the skills. A little bit like addition and subtraction will have more weight and take up more time in the maths curriculum, rather than maybe something like shape, position and direction, because these things take longer to understand at a deeper level. Another similarity is that in Mastery Maths, time is built in for consolidation. So we recognise in PE Mastery that consolidation is hugely important as well. Children learn at different rates, and will have different experiences coming into their PE lessons. So there might be time, you might need time to consolidate some of the skills. All of our PE units in PE Mastery have consolidation time built in, as well as consolidation activities built into each lesson, so that if children are not quite ready to progress, then there are lots of ideas for activities and things that you can do to help them to achieve the learning intentions for those lessons. If consolidation time is not required, because the teaching's been brilliant and all the children have got, all the outcomes, then we do provide competition and performance packs, which I feel is a really great part of the PE Mastery scheme. And these enable children to experience healthy competition, and sort of showcase their skills in competitive scenarios, as well as maybe experience the joy of performing and showcasing what they've learned in like the indoor units for gymnastics and dance and things like that. What else? So there is inclusive support with every lesson in PE Mastery, which I know Paul's going to talk about in a bit more detail a bit later on, but inclusion really is at the core of the scheme. The lessons and the activities that we have provide multiple adaptive teaching suggestions so that you can make sure that it tailors the teaching and needs of all of the children. You can tailor the teaching to all of the needs of the children in the class. What else? So it supports development of motor competence, healthy participation, and rules, strategy, and tactics. So the PE Mastery scheme looks at and focuses on the holistic development, physical, cognitive, social, and emotional side of a child, which are obviously essential to ensure the development of the whole child. I'll talk more about these areas, which are known as the 3 pillars of progression, shortly. But just to finish on what is PE Mastery, most importantly, I think the PE Mastery lessons and activities are innovative, fun and engaging. For example, one of our athletics units, the children will get to see how far they can throw a pea. They might have and they get an opportunity to have a go at welly wanging. We've got celebration of sport units where children can have a try at bottle flipping and marbles, which obviously goes back to the quote that Paul read earlier about making it enjoyable for children and varying and making sure that there's a broad and balanced range of activities to hopefully motivate them to be active beyond their PE lessons and into adulthood. Right, so the 3 pillars of progression. How are we doing for time? Not too bad. The 3 pillars of progression, they're outlined in Ofsted's research review series and are 3 conceptually distinctive but functionally connected pillars of progression that develop competence to participate in PE and in order to meet the national curriculum aims. And they are motor competence, rules, strategy and tactics, and healthy participation. So we're going to look at each of those in a little bit more detail. These run through all of our lessons, and we've got some progression maps that outline how these different areas progress throughout sort of Key Stage 1 up to Key Stage 2. But motor competence. So what is motor competence? This is a person's ability to execute a variety of motor actions and includes the coordination of both fine and gross motor skills. They are necessary to participate in not just in PE, but in everyday life, including play. So it goes without saying that developing motor competence is a huge component of PE, and it pretty much underpins everything else. If they don't have adequate motor competence, it will impact on them being able to lead healthy and active lives. But it's also important because of its relationship with motivation. So Without the secure foundations of motor competence, pupils' current and future involvement in physical education and sport can be hindered. For example, a pupil who can't jump safely or effectively will not be ready to move on to the more sort of complex activities that you might need for gymnastics or athletics, which will negatively affect their motivation and their confidence, and therefore reduce the quality and quantity of physical education or physical activity that they can access. And that is why PE or PE curriculum needs lots of well-designed opportunities to learn, practice, and refine these movements. For some pupils, PE will be their first and only experience of being taught how to produce these motor skills. So in PE Mastery, we have carefully planned how motor competence will be developed. And although motor development is age-related or not age-dependent, it is widely believed that fundamental movement skills are best developed between about the ages of 3 to 8 years old. So developing careful progression through reception and key stage 1 is important, and that's where you'll probably see a lot of fundamental movement skills happening and being taught explicitly. And then once these are secure, the fundamental movement skills will form the building blocks for more complex movements, which you might then see, obviously, as you go into key stage 2. In order for them to successfully participate in their PE lessons, they need to have those skills. It's just a little bit on another study that it shows that being carried out in England recently found out that older primary age pupils in England are not competent in the basic fundamental movement skills. In one of the studies, less than a quarter of pupils in a sample of 6 to 9 year olds had achieved mastery in running, jumping and throwing or catching. In another, they found that when exploring a wider range of fundamental movement skills, including hop, skipping and stability skills, fewer than 40% of pupils between the ages of 7 and 10 achieved mastery in each of those skills. So although you might expect to see fundamental movement skills more in key stage 1 and early key stage 2, it's something that we feel in PE Mastery needs to be constantly revisited and taught in order to make sure that those building blocks are securely in place to be able to move on to more complex movements. And that's why we have a fundamental movement skills unit at the start of the school year, which is regularly taught, and then they're regularly taught and practiced and revisited throughout other units in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. So moving on to rules, strategy and tactics. So obviously motor competence is a vital part of successful participation in sport and physical activity. It is not enough, however, to be competent alone. Pupils need to be explicitly taught the knowledge that informs and successfully directs their movement. So the knowledge of rules, strategy and tactics. Decisions about how to move, where to move, when to move are basically what rules, strategy and tactics are. And then I'll just obviously read out the rest of these here. So strategic application and performance of movement skills. Rules, strategy and tactics are understanding and applying the rules, gameplay and decision making. Composition of movement sequences, if you're thinking more about dance or gymnastics, understanding and applying the elements of dance, and then more the creative and critical thinking side of things as well. So still a hugely important part of PE. And then the third pillar of progression is healthy participation. So PE obviously plays a vital role in connecting important ideas about health to physical activity. So what is healthy participation? It's things like teamwork and communication, evaluation, reflection and goal setting, understanding the importance of healthy and active lifestyles, emotional regulation and STAR values, which Paul mentioned earlier and we'll talk about in a bit more detail later, which is one of our one of the things we have in our PE mastery scheme and runs throughout all of our PE lessons. Obviously, having a detailed knowledge of the broader physiological, psychological and socio-cultural aspects of physical activity in sport is hugely important to support and encourage a healthy and active life beyond PE. So I think I mentioned earlier, we have created 3 progression of skill maps for each of the 3 pillars of progression, or each of the 3 pillars, and that the skills are then continually developed across all of these units to ensure that the national curriculum aims are met and there's sequential progression and sufficient coverage of all of them. I think what tends to happen quite often is that the motor competence is focused on more and the learning of skills, and maybe the rule, strategy and tactics side of things and the healthy participation take a bit of a backseat and aren't covered in as much detail, or just there's not much time spent on these areas. I'm going to very quickly just go through one of the strands, which is the healthy participation strand, just to see sort of how this progresses and how this looks in our PE mastery scheme. It's from early years all the way up to upper key stage 2. So it's things like participating in PE. Obviously, that's what you're focusing on when children first come into school, and participating safely, beginning to reflect on activities, learning how to take turns, working alongside others, and starting to understand the short-term effects of physical activity. Moving on to working more cooperatively in pairs, understanding the importance of being physically active and some of its effects on health and well-being, beginning to accept winning and losing appropriately, which I think is something that continually needs to be worked on. And I don't know if you've got many experiences of these in your PE lessons, but I feel like it's quite a big one. Teaching children to win gracefully or lose in an appropriate way is a big one, and it can obviously massively impact on their enjoyment of a PE lesson and the other children. I've taught many lessons where 1 or 2 children who can't deal with those sorts of things then affect it for everybody else. So we do focus on those sorts of things quite a lot throughout our units and throughout the scheme. And then moving on to sort of lower key stage into upper key stage 2, demonstrating sports personship, beginning to think about verbal and non-verbal communication appropriately, demonstrating resilience and perseverance, setting targets and goals for themselves in order to improve themselves and others, understanding the long-term, lifelong impact of physical activity, and being able to regulate their emotions. Another one, which is a lot of children, I think, need a lot of support and help with. Particularly, you see this in PE and PE lessons, regulating emotions. I think that is me passing over to you now, Paul.
I'll take the baton, thank you. So what does a PE mastery lesson look like? So you heard a lot there from Amy around the theories and the information behind the whole scheme, but what does it actually look like in practice? Well, actually every lesson looks quite different, as we've mentioned about these varied experiences for children with physical activity. However, they all follow a very, very similar sequence for continuity and consistency. So each lesson plan is comprehensive. Everything that you will need is in there. The aim is for them to be as print free as possible, so you can access them on PDF there and use the clickable links to get to the different activities. This is the overview page, which has a run through of everything that's taking place in the lesson, and is like the landing page for each lesson. Obviously, lesson objectives and ready to progress criteria, the success criteria, the sequence of the lesson, which follows a very clear pattern from warm up, usually 1 or 2 skill teachers, which are accompanied with relevant practice activities or challenges, and then 1 or 2 what we call application activities, and these are what you would maybe refer to as a game where children try to apply the skills they've learned in that lesson or previously learnt skills during that game. And again, these can be varied. They could be anything from a team game, like an invasion game, such as a dodgeball variation or something like that, to a circuit of skills, to children composing a dance for a performance. It's really varied, depending on what units we're looking at. We can be looking anything from fundamental movement skills unit to attacking and defending, to a dance unit, to gymnastics, to then into things like teamwork and communication, celebration of sport, navigation, orienteering. So there really is a lot of variation across there, but you'll see those similar themes. I think just to point out a couple of things that I feel are quite unique to PE mastery. that we've really tried to hone in on is, as Amy said, the inclusion side of things. And that comes down to, those children who maybe aren't performing that day, for whatever reason that is, and really offering rigorous, inclusive opportunities for them with the non-performer activities, so that they really are a part of that lesson and helping their own learning still. The ability for children to evaluate and reflect on their learning as well. And I think that's something sometimes at the end of a PE lesson, when you've had a really active session, that actually it can sometimes get missed. But we've got some really good ideas, and still active ideas for how those things can be, how their learning can be reflected upon as a group. The modifications for inclusion as well, and links to different documents and different resources that can help as well. And then also consolidation activities. So, if that could be a mixture, if children need to consolidate the skills from this specific lesson, we give some options there for creating another extra lesson for that with linked activities, which are relevant to the lesson objective. Or it might be for consolidation to be able to then access this skill in this lesson. So it just varies depending on that. Also, some units will, particularly the indoor units, will come with supporting slides, which can just help children to visualize what they're being asked to do. None of our outdoor units will come with slides, obviously, for obvious reasons, that you wouldn't be able to share these. And again, as I mentioned, we're trying to really cut down on the need to print, so that it's accessible for you maybe on a device, or that you look there beforehand and are confident with the lesson. Also, we've got with some of the dance units, we've got music packs, and all lesson packs come with an activity pack or games pack, which are useful for those maybe more ad hoc PE sessions, or to find those additional games that children are really going to get behind. Just to mention, also some of the dance units have video packs as well to go with, which is always useful when teaching those units, again for children to be able to see what that looks like when they're learning the skills of the lesson. I mentioned about skill teachers. So each lesson pack will have an illustrated skill with step-by-step instructions, possibly questions to go with that for children to discuss and share ideas around. It just depends on the skill that we're actually teaching. But there is a few consistent things here. Every page that involves activities involves what I'm going to go on to talk about, the STAR values, which again underpin our PE mastery scheme, and a part of the kind of ethos of it. Personal best challenges that can be set, which Amy's going to talk about later. And then I'm going to talk more later about this, but what we call the STEP model, which you can just about see on that bottom left-hand corner, which stands for space, task, equipment, and people. And that's a really nice way, which I'll talk to you about later, about how to differentiate the different activities and games. And again, you'll see here, this is for an application activity, those common themes, the STEP criteria, the personal best, the STAR values. We tend to build up activities in different layers as well, starting more simply, gradually introducing new rules or maybe defenders or just new concepts as we go along to gradually get to a more complex game or activity. Clear area plans as well to help you, so that you know quick reference guides for equipment and setup as well, making it as simple as possible to get children active. So that leads me on to the STAR values. We've mentioned it a couple of times now, but what does it actually stand for? So our STAR values stand for spirit, teamwork, attitude, and respect. Throughout our lessons and units, you'll see that we refer to these different values, and they form an ethos, and potentially, the more they are used, a culture throughout PE lessons. And they don't detract away from the, a key concept of PE and a key area of PE, which is healthy competition, which we don't shy away from that. However, these have an equal, if not more, weighting in terms of healthy participation to really build that enjoyment for all with physical activity. They help to build those skills for everyday life, particularly social skills, demonstrating these values within PE lessons, but then in the wider curriculum and wider life are all going to be helpful for socializing and being respectful to others and to being good citizens, in the end, which is all, what we're always trying to achieve in the classroom as well. If children see positive sporting behaviours from others, then hopefully they'll demonstrate it as well. And it becomes, as I mentioned, about this kind of culture of positivity, of people enjoying their playing against each other or playing with each other or taking on a challenge or encouraging each other to achieve their personal best. And it really builds that understanding of the value of enjoyment of activity and healthy participation. It's not just about the winning. It's about enjoying your participation as well. Winning, can be enjoyable, but the biggest part is enjoying that participation and what are you getting from that as well. In terms of spirit, and there's a lot of crossovers between these, so that there's, some of these, there's no right or wrong answer with it. But in general, spirit is about showing that enthusiasm and energy for what you're doing, always trying your best and keeping going no matter the outcome, demonstrating sportspersonship, particularly in those healthy competition situations, following the rules, showing honesty and fairness when it comes to different games as well. Teamwork, we have specific teamwork and communication units, and attacking and defending involves a lot of teamwork as well. However, teamwork runs throughout our units, even if that involves individual or paired activities as well. That idea of cooperation, collaboration, communicating positively with each other, helping and supporting each other to achieve our best and to do our best, and to stay positive and enjoy ourselves. Working together towards common goals, whether that be within a specific invasion game or whether that be to meet a bit of a strange challenge, such as like Amy mentioned about, pea throwing, to be the best at that, do the best we possibly can at that, to learn those new skills, really trying to help each other to be resilient when we're partaking in these activities, making sure that everyone is included, and that putting that responsibility and teaching that with children, actually bringing others in, helping them to make collective decisions and ultimately to solve problems together. And again, all of these things are there to benefit everyday life as well. Attitude, having a positive mindset, that idea of person best comes into it again. Can I be a little bit better than I was yesterday? Can I be the best version of myself each time we try and participate? To be resilient and persevere when challenged, maintain that determination to improve and to do our best. But also it can be the attitude to apply those skills that we've learned and that we've been taught and we've worked so hard in the practice activities, not letting that just go out of the window when it comes to a game when we all get very excited. It's how can we apply that specific skill and those helpful tips that we've learned along the way? Can we share those with other people as well? Can we help other people by coaching them to be that better, to improve that skill? And then respect, the idea of recognizing our own achievements and also recognizing the achievements of others. I think it's really important to recognize, for children to learn to recognize their own achievements, however small they may feel those are, as well as others, so that they feel positive about themselves, and really build that positivity and confidence. To be safe when we're playing as well, and to take care of equipment and facilities, to show courtesy and good manners towards teammates, but also towards opponents as well. And to show really good listening skills as well, it might be included there. And again, that comes down to for safety, for being respectful, to help our learning as well, and also to listen to. I mentioned about non-performers, you know, so that they feel valued during a lesson as well. And this is just a little quote that came from a school that's been involved with our PE Mastery Scheme. So the STAR values made the children work at their best all the time. I love the personal best. It's a healthy way to be competitive and they don't lose focus, concentrating on others. As I mentioned, Amy will talk about personal best, but just to focus on that, the STAR values made the children work at their best all the time. It shifts a focus. It gives the children a focus for what are you looking for. You know, we do that across a school. You know, most schools will have some form of set of values that teachers are using in their day-to-day language to try and, you know, have children following that ethos of the school. This is no different for PE, and it can be embedded in other forms of the school as well if it's something that's really successful. So we've just got a really quick activity here that which will, if you don't mind, we'll use the comments box for. So thinking of those STAR values: spirit, teamwork, attitude, and respect. And we can keep it nice and short. So just any ideas that you have. I'll just briefly explain this game, end zone team touch. So imagine netball, but without a hoop. We've got two zones at the end. You have a person from your team in that end zone. You're trying to pass the ball between the different players on your team to eventually get it to that person in the end zone to score a point. However, there's a little bit of a twist here. It's called team touch for a reason. Each player on your team must touch the ball before it goes to the receiver in the end zone to score that point. So it's a real teamwork activity here. So I just want to open it up to you in the comments box. Any ideas for what kinds of things you might look for that relate to the 4 STAR values here? And then I'll share you some of my ideas as well as to the kinds of things I'd be looking for in this activity as well. So I'll just give us a minute just to pop any thoughts in there. Like I say, it can be quite brief. Just anything that you feel you would be looking for when it comes to that kind of game. Okay, yeah, making connections. That's a really important point. Something that actually comes into, I'll speak a little bit about physical literacy later on. Yeah, children making connections with each other probably comes down to under the teamwork there. But again, it's very, you know, there's lots of crossover in each of these. But yeah, children socializing, children making connections in terms of the physical skills as well, connecting with each other, communicating with each other, encouraging each other as well. So yeah, no, connections is a great one to suggest there as well. I'll just wait to see whether there's any others before I share what I've got as well. Fun, yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes we concentrate on the skills, on those physical skills, but actually ultimately, you know, if we're trying to encourage physical literacy and that positive relationship with physical activity, then having fun is at the core, isn't it, for that as well? Absolutely. Perseverance, because you know, that you might have 6 on your team and 5 are trying to pass between them. The chances are that, you know, you're probably not going to be, it's not going to be high scoring. So you've got to persevere. You know, you've got to keep going through those challenges and helping each other to persevere with that as well. So yeah, really, really good suggestions. All the kinds of things that you know we've written into our plans there, as you'll find on the PE Mastery lesson plans. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of spirit, again, you're looking at things like the kind of following the rules, being honest, being fair, making sure that, you know, everyone there can achieve, in terms of respect in a similar way, you know, playing safely, respecting the equipment, acknowledging the achievements of opponents if they score against you, recognizing your own performance as well, even if you lose, the fact that what have you achieved in that session, as well. Attitude, if that lesson comes from learning, say, the chest pass in netball. So have we applied the correct skill technique for that? Are we seeing that the children are applying those skills as we go through as well? And then, as you mentioned about there with teamwork in terms of connections, having fun as a team, and the perseverance side definitely would come under, I would say, the attitude there to keep going when we're finding things challenging. Thank you for joining in with that. I'll hand over to Amy again.
So personal best, RP mastery plans have personal best challenges linked to every activity, which Paul touched on earlier when he showed you an example of one of our lesson plans. But why celebrate personal best? So it develops a growth mindset. It celebrates personal progression. It is inclusive and open-ended, and it will encourage reflection and goal setting. We feel that by celebrating personal best in every lesson, it helps to create a positive and enjoyable PE environment for all learners. They're focusing on themselves. How can they do something better rather than comparing themselves to others? And so our personal best challenges will always try and focus in on that something that's open-ended and something that they can personally improve on, so that they feel that they've made some sort of progress in that lesson. And there's examples there. How many gates or triangles can you successfully perform a skill through in 1 minute? You do it once. They know what they've achieved. That's their personal best. Can they beat their personal best? If you then repeat that activity, they've got something to aim for. Or can you increase your score without dropping or missing a moving ball? So there are some examples of personal best. How many points can you score? Maybe you set yourself a target, see if you can beat that target, see if you can reach that target. How many times you can make a safe zone. So there's so many different ways that you can bring in the personal best into lessons, to provide some healthy competition for children, and that's safe for them as well, and isn't demoralizing, that they're constantly comparing themselves to somebody else. They're never going to be the fastest, they're never going to do the most catches, but if they can improve on their personal best, then that's obviously a really important and brilliant thing. Saying that, just before I think the next slide is you, Paul. I'm just going to vote. Oh no, there was a quick activity actually, and then I'll just talk a tiny bit about competition before I move on and pass back to you, Paul. So this is an activity. I think it might be from an athletics lesson on reaction time, and think about reaction time when you're sprinting. What personal best challenges could you set for this activity? So player A's got 2 balls in their hand, player B's a couple of meters away from them, and player A will randomly drop one of the balls for player A to try and catch. I think to begin with, they allowed 1 bounce before they can catch it. If you want to, in the comments again, could you think of maybe 1 or 2 ways that you could introduce or set a personal best challenge for this activity, so that they're focusing in on their own progress and setting themselves their own targets? You can put that into the comments if you would like to. So can you think of a way maybe of a personal best challenge for this particular activity that you could set for the children? I think because we are lowering maybe, lowering the ball. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, maybe not. Do you want to maybe give a tiny bit more? Getting always more difficult. So a good thing obviously is if they've achieved a personal best, maybe then introducing something that would make it a bit trickier, and then seeing if they can achieve it again. That would be a good way of introducing a personal best challenge into the activity. I think for this particular activity, the personal best challenge was how many times can you catch the ball, and then obviously you do it again. You would see if you can catch it more times in a set amount of time, or if you swap partners, can you achieve it more times? How far away can you stand? And so can you get further away and still manage to catch the ball? How far away can you personally manage to get? Or how many times can you be successful in the different reaction games? So I think there were a few different reaction games with this activity. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your suggestions. Lots of different ways of adapting the activity, as well as providing a personal best within there. Just very quickly before I pass back to Paul, though, so obviously this is a healthy way of including competition for children where they feel safe and they can all achieve. However, competition is obviously a necessary part of PE. It's one of the national curriculum aims to engage in competitive sport and activities. So competition does need to be introduced, however, at an appropriate time. Otherwise, it can be counterproductive. All the children, obviously, most PE lessons, we're going to play a game now, we're going to play a game. They want to do, that's their end point. They want to always play a game, but they're not always ready to play a game. They don't have the skills to be able to play or access a game. And for that competition, one team against another, for example. So what we do in PE Mastery is we build in enough time to teach them the skills to be able to then have a competitive scenario or a competitive game or a competitive circuit of activities at the end of the unit. So for our sort of outdoor PE lessons and the more games-based PE lessons, they will have we've got competition packs where they get to use the skills when we feel that they're ready to do that. Because competition does need careful consideration, otherwise it can be counterproductive. And then for the indoor lessons of dance and gymnastics, there's performance packs where they then get a chance to showcase and perform and put what they've learned into sort of a real life context. So yeah, that's just a little bit about competition and competition packs that we have in every unit in the PE Mastery scheme.
Okay, just on to the final section then, inclusion in PE. We've mentioned a few things that, again, run throughout the PE Mastery scheme that help to make sure that, that activities are accessible for all. Ultimately, what do we want for all children? We want all children to enjoy and feel included and get involved in physical activity. And as we've mentioned about that lifelong learning and lifelong activity. We want to be able to them to be able to learn those fundamental movement skills, master them, and then transfer them and apply them in all different activities and sports and areas of everyday life. I'll come to physical literacy in a minute because I'll speak more about that. We want them to have that lifelong love of movement and physical activity as well. It doesn't have to be a specific sport or even a number of sports. It's that love of movement and that love of activity. So coming back to physical literacy, the Sport England's consensus on this, we hear it quite a lot, it's a phrase that's used quite a lot, is it means our relationship with movement and physical activity throughout our lives. And that depends on lots of things. So the relationship side is that idea of enjoyment, that things are meaningful, that we can see value in activity as well, whatever that may be, whether that may be it just makes us feel good, it means that we socialize, that we can see a purpose to it. For some people that's even a job as well. The movement side of it, it's how we connect with people, it's how it makes us feel, it's what it makes us think about as well, and basically just how we move. And moving in all different ways. And then the idea of that throughout our lives, that can depend on lots of things, and unfortunately it maybe shouldn't. So it can depend on our circumstances, it can depend on the spaces that are available to us, the places that are available to us, the people who are around us as well. And that's why to have really high quality PE lessons and school, within schools, that those opportunities for activity, physical activity outside of PE as well, and to encourage that lifelong love of activity can really, spur children on to be those adults that just enjoy moving and enjoy activity as well. So, and develop that physical literacy. We all probably could take something from that in terms of our own physical literacy. I know I could as well. We can always develop it further. So just to mention about what we offer in terms of inclusion that can be there to support you as teachers. every unit comes with what we call an inclusive support pack. Within that inclusive support pack, we have several resources include for each lesson. So we have a visual learning sequence, which you can just about see here, highlights a sequence of all the activities. It offers children and adults as well, particularly useful for say support staff who are maybe delivering some pre-teaching and preparation for a child within your class who maybe finds PE quite stressful and quite a demand. To look at what's coming up. So, is there going to be some competition? Is there going to be a personal best challenge? Are children going to have to take turns in the next activity? Allows children and adults to prepare each other for those what's coming up next. Now our next cards, again, very similar, but it breaks it up carefully. So they'll have, a child might have this in front of them, or you might share it to the whole class, and you're saying, this is what we're doing now. What are we doing next? Because we always get those questions in class, no matter their age. What's next? What's next? Are we playing a game next? You can actually control that by sharing this information. Specifically to skills, breaking down those skills in terms of skill posters. This builds independence. Maybe it also helps those children maybe who struggle with working memory as well, so that they're not having to seek that support. It's there. They know they can seek. They know where to get those extra tips that maybe they just haven't retained as you've explained it or demonstrated it. It helps children to coach each other as well. So it helps them to learn in different ways by coaching others, or to develop their communication skills in that way. We have additional guidance for each sport or each unit as well. We also have individual target setting sheets as well for children to, and that might be specific children within your class, or again, it might be that for a unit you want to set some goals for each child, or they set their own goals as well. And as well, I mentioned earlier about the importance of the non-performer activities throughout the lesson plans too. One thing that we use a lot throughout our lessons for the specific activities and games is what we call the STEP model. So this stands for space, task, equipment, and people. This is how we look to differentiate activities and games, and it's a really nice one for keeping differentiation quite simple and quite live and quite responsive and reactive as well. So we look at, for certain activities, might be that you reduce the space to make it more challenging, or you increase the space to make it more less challenging in terms of maybe a tagging game, for example, or something like that. For athletics, you might be increasing the distance that is run or reducing that distance that is run. In terms of the task, that is basically what's taking place. That might be that you remove certain rules to simplify an activity, or you add certain rules, certain restrictions that children have to do. It might be that you introduce competition where there wasn't competition before for the more support, the competition for challenging, whereas take away the competition for a support strategy there as well. Equipment, if you're doing throwing and catching activities for a challenge, you might change the ball. It might be a smaller, harder ball. For support, you might change to a softer, larger foam ball. You might add obstacles to an area that for children to navigate. That could be a challenge. Again, you might take away some of those elements for support as well. But it just breaks everything down into different ways that you can differentiate really easily. And then the last one, people. This is quite can be quite diverse, and it can alter depending on the activity and game. But it might be that you increase the team size, for example, something like that end zone team touch. You increase the team size, it suddenly becomes a lot more difficult. You might reduce it to support children. You might reduce it down to say 4 per team, so that there's a lot more space. There's less children to have to pass to, and so on. You might give captain roles, you might offer coaching roles. These are all different ways that can help support or challenge children more within the different activities and games. Which I think brings us to the end there. Well, I think there's just one last quote to leave you with. So we've mentioned a lot about fundamental movement skills. But this quote, I think, sums things up for us for PE mastery, and really how we see PE should be and can be. Fundamental skills most definitely puts the fun into PE lessons. Our children really enjoy these highly engaging lessons and the variety of individual, pair and team games on offer. PE mastery absolutely understand that PE lessons should be about creating an inclusive, engaging and enjoyable atmosphere that promotes a love for physical activity, which ultimately, as we started with, is what we're here and aiming to do when it comes to teaching PE and getting children active.